Hi everyone, my name is Hayden. I'm a casual academic here at UNSW, and today we're going to be talking about COMP1531, which is the Software Engineering Fundamentals course here at UNSW. This lecture is a pre-recorded lecture. It's a very short lecture. We just like to slip it in before term just to get a little bit of the admin out of the way so that we can talk about the fun and exciting stuff on the first day of term of week one. But right now we're just going to be getting through some of the nitty-gritty about assessments and how the course is structured and getting set up so that you kind of have a bit of time to do this before your first day of class, essentially. The only thing I want to say in advance is that we have an amazing team in 1531 of teaching staff, and all we want to do is give you the opportunity to learn as much as possible and also to feel like you're supported in that journey. So we want to make you feel calm and relaxed as much as possible, but also get you excited to rise to the challenge that is really upskilling. I think this is genuinely one of the most exciting courses in computer science, but we'll get to that when we start the term. So again, a very soulless look at the course without worrying too much about what's in it. Welcome, yes, covered that one already. In terms of assessment in this course, it's relatively straightforward. You have 10% of your assessment comes from the labs. Labs are essentially what you've probably experienced in another course like COMP1511, where you do work mostly every week and you submit it and they all kind of stack up throughout the term and then come together at the end. You have a group project, which is worth 70%. So that's actual like groups of 4 or 5 where you all code together throughout the term and you produce something together. And that's the bulk of the course. You know, Comp 1531 is a project course. And then there's a very small amount of marks at the end for an exam. It's a at home at the time of this recording exam because everything's online again as of right now. And that's a very, very small weighting. So most students do kind of pass the course by the time they get to the exam. So the exam is not very stressful in this course. What we're going to talk about are the key kind of elements that exist throughout the course, like the touch points. You know, what are as you experience it operationally, what are the key parts? Lectures, tutorials, labs, the major project, help sessions, and the exam. Most things you would expect. In terms of lectures, we do have two-hour lectures a week. This term in 22T2, those lectures are on Monday evening and Tuesday evening from 6 to 8. The schedule of lectures is actually listed on WebCMS3, which is the website that you've probably, you've been to. It's where you've received this notice from. This is our course website. It's where everything is based. So notices, all the content will go through here. It's all in this place. This is your home. This is your like home base. But the lecture schedule is here. We do run the lectures on YouTube Live. So it's like this video that's on YouTube, except it is live, and then we upload the recordings later. But these are all the different links. So when you want to go to the first lecture, for instance, you just click on this YouTube Live link and it'll take you to this. And this lecture stream will start on May 30th at 6 p.m. The slides for the lectures as well as the recordings for the lectures are on the course work page. So on WebCMS3, which is our course site, all the timetabling stuff is under the timetable section over there. And all the coursework, all the content is under the coursework section. So this is just like a schedule of the lectures and stuff. When you actually want to go and see the content, you go to the lectures section, which includes the slides. So for instance, I can click here to get to these slides that we're looking at now. I can get the PDF version here as well, and then I can also get the video. So after the lecture, I go and snip up the live lectures and put them as like little videos here for you to go and watch later. We also have tutorials. You've probably experienced tutorials before. The tutorial schedule and the meeting links and locations can be found on the timetable lectures labs page again. It's just down here. You get to see your tutorial code, the time of your tutorial, the tutor and lab assist, the teaching staff who make your class happen. If you're in person, we show you the tutorial location and lab. We show you the tutorial location and the lab location. And if you're online, your tutor will actually message you and email you instructions about where that first online class is, though it will be on Microsoft Teams, which you all will be added to, and you've probably figured this out by now, and if not, you can post on the forum, which we'll get to in a moment. So that's the schedule. Tutorials run from weeks 1 to 10, excluding week 6, as you'd expect. Nothing particularly profound there. And the content for tutorials can be found on the coursework page. So for each of the weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, not 6, you can click here to actually go and see the content, like what you learn in the classroom. What you will find is that your tutorials in COMP1531 will be less let's do code together and a bit more collaborative, a bit more about solving problems together as groups. So it's a bit more of a fun environment. So that's something you should be looking forward to. In terms of tutorial attendance and participation, tutorials throughout the term, excluding week 1, week 1 is like your settle in week, your attendance and participation, which if you're online also includes your webcam, will indirectly contribute to your project mark. And what that means is that for the project, the major project, at the end of it, your tutor will go through and they'll say, they'll look at, say, Emily and Tam, 2 students, and they will go, A, B, or C. Was this student mostly always there, nearly always there, and did they participate? Did they write messages in the chat? Did they, respond in class if they're in person? A, great. Full marks for like attendance and participation. Or is it like somewhere in the middle? They did like okay, or did they do terribly? So it's quite light. Like you don't need to stress about, missing a class once or, not participating a couple of times. But generally, you will fall into one of those few buckets of either, you really did, you kind of did, or you didn't. So be aware of that. Tutorials aren't things that you can skip without it having some kind of impact on your final mark. In terms of labs, 1531 follows the same structure as many other CSE courses where you have a 1-hour tutorial and then a 2-hour lab. Those labs are obviously also on the schedule page because they're just following. So when you see that 3-hour time, 3 to 6, that is 1 hour of your tutorial and then 2 hours in the lab. Lab content can also be found with the tutorial content in the coursework section. You can see the lab content over here. And labs are essentially self-directed coding activities, right? So you go and write code to solve problems and you submit that code. Labs contribute 10% of your final grade throughout the course. And what you'll notice if you look at the labs is that labs in weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, and 8 have marks associated with them. And there are 12 marks there. So essentially there are 12 marks to get for the labs, and the instructions are in the labs themselves. And that makes up that 10% of the course for you. So if you do 10 out of the 12 labs, or you get 10 out of 12 for all the marks there, then you'll naturally get something like 9 out of 10 at the end. We will actually mark some of your lab 1s, in particular these 2, and we don't actually do anything with those marks, we just throw them in the bin, but we do that so you kind of get this experience after the first week of like having your lab get marked and you get a sense of the process. So it's a lot of stuff we do is really about trying to make you quite comfortable while still challenging you. So that's an example. We give you some things to do in week 1. You don't have to do them because they're not worth marks, but we'd recommend you do so that you're like, I get how this works. Now when it matters in week 2 onwards, I'm going to go for it. You'll notice that there are 3 weeks we don't have labs, week 7, 9, and 10. Why do we do that? It's actually relatively simple. A lot of the labs are very practical in terms of programming, and usually by about halfway through the term, we feel that students don't need kind of pushing on the programming front. Like, because you're working on a group project, which is like a big assignment, you kind of get it. We don't need to kind of have you doing all this group project work, lots of coding, and then hammer you with labs as well. So we try and take the pressure off you towards the end there, which is really important for us. Labs are always submitted on the Monday of the following week. So for instance, lab 1 here is due on the Monday of week 2 at 5 p.m. I believe. But each lab tells you specifically what the rule is. Lab 2 is due Monday of week 3. Lab 3 is due on Monday of week 4. The one exception is Lab 5, which is due on the Monday of week 7. We give you some extra time over that flex week, over week 6. So you do have a bit of extra time there. We'll send you out lots of reminders about this and notices, so don't stress about the specifics. We invest a lot of time to trying to be really clear with what's going on. The other thing about the labs is that they are completely auto-marked. So your tutors won't do any manual marking at all. This is good for you because what it means is that your lab time, that 2 hours you have with your teaching staff, you can actually spend that focusing on getting help. So you won't have your tutor always worried about trying to mark you or anything like that. It'll all be marked automatically, and your tutor can essentially come and help you with other problems you have with labs or the project. Now, speaking of the project is essentially a 9-week group activity that runs between the Friday of week 1 and the Friday of week 10. So the last component of the major project is due at the end of week 10, and you start it at the end of week 1. The project is done in groups of 4 or 5. Don't ask if there can be 6, it's too big. Don't ask if there can be 3, it's too small. We generally will put you in groups of 5. 4 is the exception, that's the only exception. And what we do is, if you're watching this, you would have already seen that I've sent out a form that essentially allows you to preference one person to be in your group. What we do is just before the first lecture in week 1, we actually go and form your groups based on those preferences and some randomization, and we put you in the groups for your first week. So the first week you should already be in groups, like preemptively for the project, but the project hasn't started. So that first week is all about meeting your group, settling in, but you don't have any things to do. And when we do release the project, we will release it. I mean, the instructions will be sent out to you, but here's the page for it if you're interested. Something that I don't have in these early lecture slides is we actually do have a lot of practice activities. And practice activities are essentially kind of like, they're like labs that aren't marked, but we give you all the questions and answers, like all the solutions. So if you're feeling like you aren't getting a concept, you feel like a lab is challenging or something else is challenging, you can actually go through these practice activities and see what a problem is and what a solution is and get comfortable that way. Let me pull one of those up for you now. Apparently the uni is having technical problems, so I can't show you that right now. We'll show you that in a bit. So that's pretty much it on the major project. We'll be talking a lot about that later. In fact, there'll be a pre-recording when we release the project, which will give you a bit of insight on how to get set up. There are also help sessions. Help sessions are common in other computer science courses. They're essentially drop-in sessions, like you go to a doctor, you pop in, you say, I want some help, or get a haircut, where you can pop in into like a video call. All help sessions are online and get some help. They do start in week 2, so there's no help sessions in week 1, and the schedule is listed, no surprise, under the timetable help sessions section, where we show you all the help sessions throughout the term. Now, 2 things to be aware of with the help sessions. The first one is that some help sessions have more tutors on them than others. What this means, we put more tutors on help sessions when we think there are going to be more of you coming along, and we put less when we think there are less, so that you get the support you need, right? So we divide people up in a smart way. Sometimes it's impossible to predict how many students will turn up. Sometimes tutors are in these sessions bored. Other times they're drowning with questions. So what I would say is that please be understanding that sometimes you might be able to get in and get a question answered quickly, and other times you might have to wait like 30, 45 minutes. So always go to a help session with something to do, if that makes sense. Like if it's fold your laundry, or if it's make dinner, or if it's do something else with your coding, it doesn't matter. But don't go there thinking, I need help and I can't do anything else in my life right now, because sometimes you have to wait half an hour, and it's just better to, you know, have something else to do. Keeps you calmer. You can't do anything about it. We can't just pull tutors out of the air randomly at 6 p.m. on a Saturday, you know? So we work together on that. You be patient, understanding. We'll do everything we can to help you out, and we'll all get along, which will be great. We'll have a great time. And then lastly, the exam. The exam is open book and online. So, you know, take-home exam. There is no hurdle, as in if you get 0 in the exam, you can still pass the course. There are no mercy sups, which is a way of saying that if you don't do well in the exam, you can't take it again. You get one attempt. We'll talk about that much later in the course. And details about the final exam will be shared on the exam page, which is, as you'd expect, right down here. And you can read that anytime. But again, typically we won't talk about this until week 10, and you don't need to worry about it till week 10. So don't stress about the exam at all. Throughout the term, you're going to want to get help at various times. You're going to get stuck. Maybe you can't access the tools. Maybe your code is broken. Any type of time you need help, I would go through this list. So the first thing is, if you can talk to your team, your group of 4 or 5 about your problem, then you should do that first. They're probably wonderful people. They probably care about you. You probably care about them, even if it's just professional. So if you're like, I've got a bug, go talk to them. They can be really helpful. Many times that won't always be the option. So you can actually go and ask a question on our forum. The forum is linked in the sidebar over here. If you click on this, it will... I've probably already added you to the forum. You've probably gotten an email invite to join the forum. But if you don't, you can sign up yourself. You can say, Hayden Smith, and then you can type in your email. I would strongly recommend that you enter your UNSW email with your Z ID. For you, that's just the Z number .student@student.unsw. The reason this is useful is when you ask a question, we can use your Z number to look up your details, so it actually will get you answers quicker. In my case, though, I've already got an account, as you'd expect, so couldn't remember my password. And this is our forum. Now, again, by the time you see this, you'll see a few more questions such as introduce yourself and welcome to the course. And a few other things you can ignore, but if you have a question throughout the term, big blue button, new thread, what is wrong here? You can put it in a category and ask your question. Sometimes we'll have templated responses. What I would say to all of you is that you will always get questions answered quickly if you follow a certain template, and we'll put a template right here. And that template is basically, link us to your code. Link us to where the problem is so we can go have a look. Tell us what's wrong. Tell us what you've done to try and fix it. The best piece of advice I can give, knowing that many of you will probably either not listen or forget it, is that it is very easy to figure out where your problem is. Why you're having that problem or what the problem is hard, and that comes with experience. So if your code isn't working, it's very easy to go and put lots of print statements throughout your code and point to a particular line. So if you can ever come to a help session or your tutor or the forum and say, here's my code, this particular section, these 1, 2, 3 lines are not doing what I think they should. This is what they should be doing. This is what it is doing. I don't know why. Can you help? We'll answer that like instantly. You'll get such a quick response. Whereas if you kind of just say something's not working and it's really vague, that'll be really hard for us to help out with. So keep that in mind. Sometimes it's very hard to solve problems on the forum. Then it's good to go to a help session. Generally forums are preferred, but that's why we have help sessions for more complicated things. And if for some reason your issue is quite personal, for instance, it relates to your group or something to do with your class, or it's something that your tutor specifically needs to know about, then you should email your tutor or your lab assistant. Now, you can email them easily by going down to the staff option here, and you'll see all the wonderful, lovely tutors we have in the course. And you'll see yours. For instance, my tutor might be Gary the frog. Gary's not a frog, just to be clear, but he likes frogs, I think, or doesn't matter. And you can just find Gary's email down here, or you can click the email button. I would strongly recommend that you don't message people on MS Teams. Try not to message your tutors on Teams, please. It's just kind of a bit invasive a lot of the time because they get lots of notifications, and sometimes students call their tutors and stuff. So try and send them an email. They've been asked to check their email frequently enough, and they're casuals. They'll get to it when they can. And if you have any problems, if you have problems with your tutors, if you're having a panic attack, if you have some special consideration problems or some equitable learning, can't remember what the S stands for, equitable learning services topics, or anything at all, literally anything at all, you can email cs1531@csc.unsw.edu.au. That comes to me, right? That comes specifically to me. So consider that a private enough environment. If it's something like my code's not working, I'm just going to tell you to post on the forum, etc. Or I might tell you to email your tutor, but always know that you can email me anytime. I will reply to every email every student sends me, I promise you. So let's become friends and make sure that that channel's used appropriately. Now, you've probably noticed just from me talking that, oops, the wrong term, sorry. Just got to change this to the right term. That we have all these tutors here. Throughout the course, you will also see a few key tutors a lot. They are our course admins. Now, I understand that many of you have come from COMP1531, which has a very unique structure, and in COMP1531, we want you to essentially avoid ever emailing the course admins directly. This is quite an important thing to get your answer done quickly. So anytime you have a problem, where like if you can't log into something or you feel like it's an administrative problem, please don't email one of these people to solve your problem. Please post on the forum or email CS1531. Everyone's reading this stuff, so like whoever's relevant will see it. Please don't email specific people, because I check my email far more regularly than any of these specific tutors, because I work more hours at the university. The forum is checked by many tutors, so it will basically take a long time to get a response comparatively to the other options if you email them directly. So please post on the forum or email CS1531. Again, we will look after you. So in terms of getting set up for the course, what's really useful about this course is that if you're using the CSE machine, and that includes like VLab, if you've used VLab before, then you don't need to do anything to get set up. It's like already set up for you. VLab, if you're not familiar with it, is like a remote desktop into the CSE machines. I'm sure many of you would have used it in like COMP1511 or another course. But if you haven't, there are some instructions here about how to use it. If you are doing a local setup, that means that you are running software on your computer and not connecting to the CSE machines. Then whether you're using Linux or Mac OS X or Windows, follow these instructions that we have on GitLab here. On WebCMS3, because they kind of take you through how to set these things up. So again, if you're using VLab, you don't need to set up anything, maybe with the exception of installing Microsoft Teams, but that takes all of 1 minute. If you're doing it locally, you might need to set a few of these things up. Now, to avoid the kind of stress or confusion of, oh, there's so much stuff here, here's a really simple list of everything that's going on. In the course, we really only have 4 pieces of technology that you need to worry about. That's WebCMS3, firstly. That's our like home, as I mentioned before. There's STEM, the forum, which we've already looked at. There's Microsoft Teams, which if you haven't already played around with it, you can go to Microsoft Teams and you can just download it. There should be a download button. Download app, and then you can just log in with your UNSW credentials. We're going to use Microsoft Teams as a way for your tutors to communicate with you and for you to communicate with your team members in the project, so that should be super good. And then finally we have GitLab. GitLab is essentially, it's very hard to explain without kind of starting the theory of the course, but GitLab is a place where our content is kept. It's where like you go and do all of your work for the course. So it's basically a website. This is it here. There's a link to it. I'm having a bit of problem at the time of this recording to log into it. Maybe it's fixed now. It's a bit of a shame. This is saying that the UNSW servers aren't working, which is very annoying. But we'll talk a lot. We'll kind of go through that a lot more throughout weeks 1 and stuff. And all the links on WebCMS3 link there. So for instance, on your tutorial on the lab pages, you'll see if you look at all these URLs like here, these are all GitLab links. It's just really a place where we store code and you work on code. But there'll be a big run through of that in our first lecture. So our first lecture of the course is just using GitLab. So don't stress about it if you're finding it weird to look at. We will go through it in plenty of detail. The 2 main pieces of software we have in the course that we use are Git and Node. Node is what helps us run JavaScript, and again, all of these instructions, if you're running things locally, can be found on our Getting Started page here. And again, you don't need to install anything if you're using VLab. That's pretty much it. At the end of every lecture, there is actually a feedback form that you can grab your phone and scan the QR code. Or if you're watching, like, the QR code is for if you're like lying on your bed watching this and you're feeling lazy and you just scan it with your phone. Or if you're clicking around on your computer, you can open the form here. The form is really, really simple. It pre-populates the lecture. It says, how was the lecture? Average. I don't like yellow t-shirts. I think it's a shirt, not a t-shirt. No, I don't know. I don't know anything about clothes. And what is your name? Now, you can leaving your name is optional. Explaining your answer is optional. The reason I like people to leave their names is because if I can follow up if I have a question. Sometimes people say things like, "Oh, it was too slow," and I want to ask, was it all too slow, or was just some of it too slow? Because if I don't understand your feedback, I can't do anything with it. It doesn't have to be extensive. It should take you 10 seconds. That's the aim. The aim is like, I'm asking for 10 seconds of your time. I don't want to waste your time. You have more important things to do than fill in a form. But this will be at the end of every lecture. Beyond that, please get excited for the start of term. As I've said, we'll talk a little bit more about what 1531 is and what the content is, and get started in the first few lectures right into week 1. We have a few exciting things kind of planned in the first 4 lectures here, and I just can't wait to interact with you all. I know it sucks that there's still lectures online, so we don't get to do them in person, but typically my experience is most UNSW students are wonderful people. So I'm thrilled to have an exciting term with you all, and we'll see you soon. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your holidays.